So I want to welcome everyone to the 3 p.m. Eastern Time segment, and it's a great pleasure and an honor to be speaking with one of the most versatile, talented, and nicest guys in the business. And we here know him for his work on Westerns generally and Bonanza specifically, but his career is far beyond the Western genre. He's one of the few people who can say he got his start at the tail end of the golden age of television in the very, very late 50s, early 60s, working with Robert Young and many other people, and he could name drop far better and easier than I can. He's the voice of Johnny Quest. You can't get a more iconic cartoon character than that, and Johnny Quest hopefully will be getting a lot more publicity and viewership with MeTV's new MeToons cartoon channel. And I'm told that Johnny Quest is going to be an integral part of their lineup, so that's pretty exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool. And Ginger wanted to start off our segment with a Tim Matheson highlights reel. And I don't know if Ginger's ready to do that. Also, very exciting news, which Tim will tell us about himself, but I'll just throw it out there that Tim has written an autobiography, Damn Glad to Meet You, a very, very memorable and clever title, if ever there was one. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, hearing stories from the book and from Bonanza. And yeah, it's going to be a fun talk. So what do you think, Ginger? Should we start the Tim Matheson highlight reel?
Mind coming down here, boy?
Some people call me Griff, and others call me Mr. King. And those are the only two names that I answer to.
Tell me why you're here.
Hammered a man with a pick handle.
Did you kill him?
I might have, but I got stopped. He's my stepdad. He liked to beat on people. He beat on me till I got tired of it.
So to give you a gold medal.
This is the classiest prison I've ever been in.
This is a working ranch. My home. For you, it's an opportunity. A chance. A new start. Whatever you want to make it.
I just want to leave.
Why?
Because according to the terms of my parole, that's the one thing that I can't do. And when somebody tells me I can't do something, that's the one thing I want to do.
Ben Cartwright went way out on a limb to do you a favor, and you act like he's...
Well, did I ask him to?
People like him, you don't have to ask.
Favor is something you ask for.
No, not always.
My motto is if you need a helping hand, you're going to find it right at the end of your own wrist.
No.
A man has got to shape his own life, Candy. And every time I turn around, somebody else is telling me where I'm going to go and what I'm going to be.
Well, Griff, if you make up your mind to stay here, you're going to behave yourself. And you're going to work. Because if you don't, if you cause any trouble for Ben Cartwrights, it's not going to be just the law that's looking for you.
I worked as a top hand on a ranch once.
Well, then you ought to know that the new man gets the dirty jobs, and you're the new man.
Look, my being here is your idea.
The warden's.
All I'm asking for is a chance to prove I can do the job. What's the name of that ugly beast?
Alice.
Alice?
Hold it! Break it up. Break it up. That's enough.
Get your hands off of me.
Griff, where do you think you are? What are you doing?
They cut the ropes on my bunk.
They do that to every new man that comes
They
in
don't
here.
do it to me, no.
It's a joke. Griff,
There's no
it's a joke.
where I come from. Everything is a matter of life and death.
Griff, you're someplace else now. This isn't not a prison. I'm not a guard. These men are not your enemies.
They was laughing at me.
No, they were laughing at the joke. You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Now turn that horse around and get on out of here.
You ain't gonna use that gun anymore, and I'm gonna use this one.
Candy, come on.
What did you do to Ben Cartwright?
Nothing. And I didn't rob that Wells Fargo office.
Then why are you running away, Griff?
Because nobody listens to an ex-con.
I listen to you. Ben Cartwright will listen to you. They'll all listen to you if you go back there and talk.
Yeah, is that what you're taking me back there for? To talk? More talk?
I'm not taking you anyplace. You go anywhere you like.
What happens now?
Well, you'll be happy to know we got the man.
I told you I didn't do it.
The man who did it is in Carson City.
Well, I knew damn well it wasn't me.
You kept the posse combing this countryside night and day, and all the time you knew where those boys were? Why?
The old man, he just wanted some time.
Time for what?
I don't know. He didn't want those little fellas split up. And I don't either.
Of course you knew. You know you were wrong. Keeping this to yourself. You know that, don't you?
You sick, Griff?
No.
Maybe you should step outside and get some fresh air, huh?
Yeah, maybe that'd be a good idea. If I come back to see you later.
Yeah, go on.
Come on, open up. Wonder what got into him?
Jailhouse fever. Bars and locks.
I'm going back to Auburn.
Listen to me. You got business in Hawthorne. They got Candy in jail there, and they're saying he killed a lady named Ella Peterson.
Candy.
That's right. They got him charged with murder. He needs you. He needs you to tell the authorities in Hawthorne about him getting knocked out and robbed in Suggsville. Will you do that?
I can do that.
Whither thou goest. Now, that's what that man said. Whither thou goest. You remember?
Not too well, no.
Well, you must have been a lot drunker than I thought, Griff.
Yeah.
Griff, this lady tells us that you and her are married.
That you ran out on her. Hey, I was gonna go back and see her.
But when? A week, a month, a year, whenever you got ready, when?
Look, Joe, she's my wife.
Look, we understand that. You're the one that seems to have forgotten it.
You just better watch the way you talk to my husband, mister.
Well, Mrs. King, alone at last.
You did a very good job, Griff. You seem genuinely surprised to see me.
Well, I was. I wasn't expecting you this soon. Why do you do it, Duffy?
Because I feel useful.
You mean you can't be happy unless somebody's trying to kill you?
I didn't say danger, Griff. It's the excitement of doing something that I feel is important.
Oh, easy.
All right.
Hey, I'm gonna take your advice. I ain't gonna fall in love with you.
All right.
But don't try and talk me out of it. Once I made up my mind, that's it.
You're a hard man, Griff.
Yeah. Well. So long, Duffy.
Goodbye, Griff.
was lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So how does it feel watching that?
Well, I got punched a lot, you know.
Yes.
I don't think I ever, I mean, everybody ducked under every punch I threw. So, and then I'd get knocked down or thrown in the water. And it was like, God, that brought back such great memories. And I got to tell you, they're so simply and well directed. And the way that they would play a scene in a two-shot, like with Lauren and me, where I was profile to him and he's looking at me frontal face, and then I turn away from him and now it's both of us looking at downstage towards the camera. Play the whole scene like that. And you really got to be, it takes good actors to do it because you got to get the pacing right. It takes good director to stage it, but it also takes good script and good dialogue so that it's worth watching for a minute and a half or 40 seconds or whatever without the cutting. You know, things today nowadays are just, you know, they're cut so quickly. And I part of it was the fact that they didn't have all the time in the world to shoot this, but so you have to be clever and try and do it in as few shots as possible. But God, it brought back some great memories.
And you have said that you learned your craft working a lifetime on sets and working with the best directors in the business and the best fellow actors. How, as you look back, what kinds of things did you think you learned on the Bonanza set?
Well, I was at an awkward moment in my life at that point, and I was studying Stanislavski and an actor prepares, and it was all method acting, and I was really heavily into that, as you know, and I was just starting it, and I asked everybody on to the consternation. I mean, because this crew had been together for 13 years, you know, prior to my joining in, and I was so thrilled to be there and intimidated and just what, you know, it was wonderful. It was just, and they're such good actors and such, it was really quite wonderful. But I asked them to call me Griff King and not by Tim Matheson, which was really, you know, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, what an idiot. And you know, and a few people did. I mean, you know, but the other, you know, Michael and Lauren just go like, yeah, right. And I forgot about that. And then I would add time to the day because usually you just block a scene for the camera and the lighting, and it takes, you know, however long the scene runs, you just stand there and, you know, and you sort of do it, and they go, be over there on this line and be over here, and they throw down marks, and then they light it, and you go off and come back, and then you shoot it. Well, I would take that rehearsal to try and find the motivation and find the real perfect blocking. And I said, just let us do this once, and then you can, you know. And I remember the director who did Theodore Duffy said,
Bill Claxton.
Oh, it was Billy, yes. And he was fabulous. And I said, well, how was that rehearsal? And he said, well, the audience is asleep now, but the blocking is good. We'll use that. And I said, yeah, no, I'm finding stuff here. I'll get it up to pace. And he goes, thank you. He was very patient with me, and as they all were. And you know, you could learn so much just being around Michael Landon. You know, what the classiest guy, wonderful heart, come in, did his own makeup, just, you know, in the morning, he'd come in and do his own makeup. And he was writing, he was directing, and he was acting. And I remember the facility and the ease with which he did a very emotional scene, and just tears started streaming out of his eyes, and it was just take one. I mean, he just said, yeah, print that, let's go. And he was directing, and it was like, oh my God. I mean, he was just, what an inspiration, and great fortune for me to have shared the stage with him, you know. And I learned a lot, and I learned a lot of what not to do on Bonanza. And fortunately, they had the patience to put up with me.
And I recall being surprised when I saw pictures of you on the set of Forever, which was the 2-hour show that was the premiere episode, and your character had not been introduced yet. And of course, there's no relationship between when a show is filmed and when it airs on TV. But I thought it was interesting that you were on the set of that show, even though you weren't in the show. And then I'm hoping you can explain. My best guess is that you were in Northern California to film the opening sequence for your show.
Yeah, at the beginning of every season, we'd shoot a lot of stock footage. Ride left to right, now walk the horseback right to left, and now right to the camera, right away from the camera. In a hurry, now you and Candy are doing it. Okay, now you and Little Joe, and so you'd shoot all that stuff on a real cattle ranch and up in the real woods, up in Northern California. And I guess I was up there to do certainly the title shot, but it was and the most terrifying thing happened to me while I was there. We all stayed in a motel, and so that it was a square with an open center, and people, you park in front of your room, and Lorne Green had a brand new, just the coolest, biggest Mercedes-Benz I'd ever seen. It was brand new. It was just wow. I mean, it cost more than a house would cost, even back then, right? And it was parked right in front of my room, and I remember somebody had told me that the hood ornament on a Mercedes is on a swivel, so that if something hit it, it would just bend and pop back into shape, and it was on like a little swivel head. And I thought, well, how clever is that? I want to see if that's what happened. And I went out, and there wasn't anybody around. I walked out and I just started swiveling it, and it went click, snap, and it came off my hand. And I was like, oh my God, I've been on this show 4 days, and now I've just broken Pa Cartwright's car. So I didn't know what to do. And I set it back down on the hood right in that little spot. And it stayed there, and I just went back into my room, and I could just imagine poor Lorne getting in his car, slamming the door, and watching that thing go.
Damn cheap German merchandise.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh Lord, yeah. But I just so enjoyed my time, and it was the best crew, and Michael took such good care of everybody. Because he was sort of running the show basically at that point.
Yeah, I had gotten to describing him as the de facto producer of the show. But yeah. I liked the phrase that you used in an interview. You called him the mayor of that show, which I guess is pretty apt.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something that you may not know that I think you'll find interesting. Lauren Hutton was cast before Bonnie Bedelia to play Little Joe's wife. And Dick Collins told me this story. Producer Dick Collins, I'm sure you remember very well. Yeah. He said the phone rang, and it was Lauren Hutton, and she had some questions, and she wanted to discuss things with Michael. And Michael said, I don't want to talk to her. I have nothing to say to her. Tell her to forget it. And Collins is watching this, and his jaw is dropping. And the interpretation is that Michael, the mayor of the show, he wrote the show, he's going to direct the show, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he didn't want to hear anything from an actress, and so we just moved on and cast Bonnie Bedelia instead.
Oh, Bonnie is just, she's a revelation. I mean, she's a fantastic actress, and, I had a huge crush on her. I mean, and because I was up there while they were shooting,
right.
And it's also the first time I got a chance to work with Bing Russell. And then, a couple of years later, then I worked with Kurt. And I'd never met Kurt at that point, but and the people you got to work with on Bonanza and essentially all the Westerns. I mean, I did a longer season of The Virginian, and you just it was like the best actors in Hollywood would do all the Westerns. You do those shows. You would do Bonanza. God, it was a thrill to be on Bonanza. It was like, the top 10 show.
How did you get the part? You recall?
I got a call from my agent, and we always used to have answering services, and so I was in acting class. I ran to the phone. I got there first. I threw the dime in and I called in and I got a machine, you know, and my agent called and he said, yeah, I was under contract to Universal at the time. I was in the third year of my contract, going into my third year. And they, I was just thinking, somebody says, oh, I guess Lauren found out about the car. We'll never know. But and they just offered it to me. And I was a little torn because I just done a Western and I was at that.
Excuse me. So not come in and audition, but we've seen your work on the Virginian. We've seen Lock, Stock, and Barrel, and
Yes.
and we know you can ride a horse.
Yes.
So that's nice. That's nice.
Oh, it was flattering. It's one of the first times that had ever happened to me.
Yeah.
But I was kind of torn because I've been doing Western, and I wanted to kind of try and, I was studying acting and I was, taking myself way too seriously. And so I said to my agent, I said, I'm kind of torn. I mean, should I do this? I mean, I've done Westerns and I've done all these Westerns. Should I keep doing this? And he goes, you're lucky to get the offer, and click, and hung up the phone, and I said, well, maybe he's right. And, I was always a fan of Bonanza and it was a tragedy, certainly, when we lost Dan Blocker. And I knew that the show was undergoing a transition during that period because he and Michael, I guess, well, they all were, but I mean, but Dan was sort of the heart of the show in many ways,
Did you ever meet him in your travels years before?
No, I didn't, and you could just feel the sort of the chasm that was there because he wasn't.
Yes.
And, and joining a family but when they had just lost one of their favorite members, it was tough. It was tough for everybody.
And you watched the show when you were a kid growing up, I presume.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there was nothing like seeing that map burst into flames at the beginning of every episode, because that was like, I think it was the first show I ever saw in color on a television. And that music, and it was pretty dynamic, it was a great show. It was just one of the best shows on TV.
But you don't have a recollection of going to audition for a part when you were still a kid?
No. I auditioned for Gunsmoke and didn't get it. I don't think I ever auditioned for Bonanza. But back then, every studio had a Western town.
Yes.
On the lot. And
standing set.
Yeah, and they're all gone. I mean, they're all gone now. I mean, nobody even hardly has a back lot anymore. Universal does, and then they drive tour buses through it. But and they still use it. But yeah, it was the great thing about Bonanza. I mean, we pretty much stay on the lot, or in the town, and then we go on location for 3 or 4 days, an episode out, somewhere, Albertson Ranch, or different locations that were remote.
Yeah. David Canary, you told me that he was something of a mentor, and he took you aside more than once to say, hey, can you talk about David a little bit?
Well, David, he was sort of my guiding spirit because, he'd gone away and come back.
Yeah.
And and he understood where I was coming from, and as an overachieving, idealistic, stupid young actor. And so, and he would give me advice. He says, maybe you don't have him call you Griff. I mean, maybe you just things like that. But he made me also feel at home and part of the group, which I think is important, and it was one of the best crews I've ever worked with. I think that everybody adored Michael. Everybody adored each other. I mean, I can remember every night, whether anyone came or not, Props would set up a bar, and there would be drinks for anybody who wanted drinks after work. And, I mean, that was just sort of the way things were done in those days. And, after a show, to show your gratitude to the crew, I'd buy a big barrel full of iced beer, and you'd set it out during the last couple of scenes, and nowadays the lawyers are too close to the sets now. They won't let you do any of that stuff. So.
You tell a wonderful story about Charlie Deercop. You had a long lunch together. And I would ask you to tell the uncensored version. We're all among friends here. We're not going to tell any stories out of 10.
Oh my gosh. I think I'd first worked with Charlie on Lock, Stock, and Barrel or you know, one of the Universal Westerns that I had done. And so we got over here to Bonanza, and we were, you know, it was a nice reunion. And we didn't, we were doing some stuff a little bit in the morning, and we had one little kind of walkthrough scene in the afternoon. We really didn't have to do any more acting that day. And I said, let's go back to my place. And I was like 5 minutes away. I said, come on, I got stuff. We can make lunch over there. And so we went back to my place and made sandwiches. And he pulled out a rather large marijuana cigarette. And he said, do you want some? And I said, no, Charlie, you know, we got to work this afternoon. He says, we got nothing. We're walking through a scene. We don't even have dialogue. And I said, and he's puffing away. And I said, well, all right. I mean, you know, I took 1 or 2 puffs, and I've said, I was baked to Rosa by the time I got back to the Ponderosa. And of course, the second we get back to the set, some production assistant runs up to me and says, Tim, we're changing the schedule. We're doing that scene that was going to be done tomorrow with you and Lauren, and we're going to do it now. And I just said, of course you are. And I'm still slightly stoned. I'm going like, oh my God. And I'm just brand new on the show. And it was a lineup of us standing outside in front of the Ponderosa house. And Lauren's walking from person to person. And there was only one line I think I had to, but it took for him forever to get to me. And then he stopped right in front of me and stared at me. And his character was annoyed with me. And he's looking at me, and I'm dripping sweat, going, he knows I'm stoned. He knows this is probably my last scene in Bonanza. You know, oh my God, I hope I don't screw this up. And I got through it fine, but it was like one of those paranoid things. And I was like, never, ever going to do this again. I'm never, ever going to do that again.
So it was a learning experience, to be sure, of what not to do, like you said. And Michael Landon was known to take a drink from time to time, and I think he expressed to you some of his favorite libations, if you care to share.
Well, I was sitting by the prop, and I was buddies with all the, you know, I mean, on a crew like that, you get to know everybody pretty well. You live with them. And so I was sitting outside the prop truck one day, and I could see the prop guy working on he was putting together, he had a red Solo cup, and he was doing something inside. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, oh, it's for Michael. And I said, what is it? What's in there? And he goes, and it was on the rocks. It was Almaden Chablis or Chardonnay wine. And Almaden was a big jug wine. It wasn't Gallo. It wasn't kind of like, you know, the kind you drink, you know, that less fortunate people would drink on the street, winos, but it wasn't really great wine. And you know, but Michael, only in the afternoon, he'd have a cup and he'd sip at it. And I remember asking him, I said, Michael, I said, what are you drinking there? And he said, it's Almaden. And I said, why aren't you drinking French, you know, Chardonnay, or why? So, I mean, you're as rich as they come. How come you're drinking Almaden wine? And he just said, I don't know. I just like it. And he was just so unpretentious and so sweet, and didn't mind me butting my nose in his business. And he was never, ever inebriated. I never saw him inebriated. So, you know.
And you picked up on directing techniques at that time, even though I suppose you were quite far away in your development from thinking about directing yourself. But I guess you thought, I'm here and I should learn and absorb as much as I can.
Well, he was a master class, Michael, you know, and it was what, you know, it's one of those, when you see somebody who's that skilled and talented, he made it look so easy, you know, but he was just always prepared, and his heart was always just right in it. And he was such a good, simple actor. They always used to say, like Henry Fonda, when I worked with Henry, when I was in Years, Mine, and Hours, and he basically said his rules of acting were, you walk in, you hit your mark, you look them in the eye and you tell them the truth, and that's what everybody on that show did. There was not a lot of overacting going on, there was very, very, very good acting on that and very good directing.
Lewis Allen, who directed your first episode, Riot, he
Oh my
had
God.
a tough job coordinating. There was a lot going on screen.
Yeah, I was so impressed watching that, and I had no idea what I was getting into really. And I came over there and it was like a Swiss watch how well they worked. And Lewis was so expert at handling because it was it's prison stuff. There's 30 people in a room, and how do you stage it? I'm thinking, well, we'll never get through this. And it was like boom, 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 and he had it all precisely figured out. We're in this part of the cell block. We're going to shoot this scene. We're going to pull up a scene from 20 pages later. We're going to get a piece of that, and then we'll get another piece of this other one over here. And the economy with which he shot was so good. Was so good.
He told me he was much in demand because he gave you motion picture quality at top breakneck speed in his distinctive British accent. That's how it
And the Teddy Voigtlander and the camera department was so good, so fast. And and that's the only way you could make a show like that work. And I mean, those guys worked with Michael on all his shows.
Yeah.
After that, they spent all their years working with him on Bonanza. And I think it was the first show I was ever on that they alternated cinematographers.
And that was David Dortort's innovation. And he started that right from the beginning because Lester Shore, who photographed every episode the first year, quit. He just couldn't take it anymore. So they started alternating with Haskell Buzzy Boggs the second year. And Buzzy worked with you and then went on to do Little House, alternating with Teddy Voigtlander. Yeah.
And it was one of those things where you didn't see it in TV like that. You didn't see two prop departments switching. You didn't. It was because it cost more money.
Yes. Yeah.
It was better quality, because you want your cinematographer to be able to go scout locations with the new coming director who is preparing while you're shooting episode 3. Episode 4 is being scouted and prepped and cast and everything else. And you want your cinematographer to be there and help pick the locations because they'll know where the sun is and things like that. And it's rarely done. It's rarely do they alternate. On a couple of shows they do.
But you're right. It seems like such a more efficient way to do it because to have a week of preparation is only going to result in much better quality on the screen. But I guess you have to weigh that with the cost.
No, you're too rational for Hollywood. Here's the secret I learned as becoming a director. It's harder. It's better for the producer to say no. And he's tough. He or she is tough. No, I'm not going to go that over. We're not going to spend for that. Because they can blame going over on the director. Well, Tim, he couldn't finish the day. It's what can I say? He should have been able to finish that day. And it's easier to approve overtime than it is to go out on a like David Dortort did and say, I want 2 DPs. I know it's more money, but it'll pay off because it'll allow us to do the show in the time allotted. And it took a strong man like David to do that. And I would say most producers, 1, probably don't understand that, and 2, don't have the courage to ask for it or demand it.
Did you see David Dortort on the set much?
I don't remember seeing him around that much. I mean, no. I remember, when we were on the lot, he would come by, and they're always so cordial and always so gracious. And interesting side note, Warner Brothers, because then it was the Burbank Studios. I think it was Columbia owned half and Warner Brothers owned half at that point. And
they called it the Burbank Studios for a short time. Yes, you're right.
Exactly. And when I came back to Warner Brothers I did a series there for 4 years called Heart of Dixie. And the set that where my office was built, I walked into it and I went, oh my God, this was the Ponderosa. This was the same set. I came in the backside of it. And I remember, so it's another set, it's another stage. And I'm walking and I think I walked out the other door, the other side of the stage. And then I realized, holy crap, this was the Ponderosa. And it was just the irony of that, and it took place like that it was, both of those shows were on the same stage. It was wonderful.
Our friend Rob Word asked a question that I was thinking about. Do you recall the name of your stunt double?
Let me think. At that point, it might have been Joe Stone. Because Joe, I know Joe. No, I didn't get together with Joe.
I know there were a couple of guys that you mentioned when you did the audio commentary for Riot,
right?
But I don't remember off the top of my head what the names were.
I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
It'll come to me.
We'll recall you as a witness later.
Okay.
Again, on the minutia and trivia, because it's important. I guess it's trivia, but not trivial. Do you recall the name of your horse? And did you get along well with the horse?
Oh, they gave me a good horse, and we spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time riding around and just but I don't remember the horse's name.
One of the aspects of your tenure on the show that I thought was very fascinating was David Rose composed a theme for your character. And we heard it a little bit at the end of the Theodora Duffy show. And that, to me, solidified you as an extended member of the Cartwright family, and you were in, and it was a nice touch. And I guess this might be a good time to ask, are you aware of what direction your character might have gone in had the show not been canceled prematurely?
We never really talked about stuff like that, because Michael was writing, and they just cranked him out, and it was the last episode that was filmed was Theodora Duffy. It wasn't the last episode. I don't think it was aired.
Correct.
But there was an unusual story. Maybe I've told you about Karen Carlson, who played Theodora Duffy, and she'd just done Downhill Racer with Robert Redford. She was so lovely and beautiful and wonderful. Oh, yeah. And there was a bit of a little spark between she and I, but she was married, and she happened to be married to an actor. So I mean, I'm like, but she was married to an actor named David Soul, and
Starsky and Hutch.
Pre-Starsky,
Pre-Starsky. Yeah, okay.
So I don't think I'd ever met him. I knew of him because it was the usual suspects who would always be up for the same parts and stuff. But in that scene where she kissed me the first time, where we kissed, was the day he comes over to visit. So he comes, he said, hi, just, I'm introduced to him, and hi, and, and he said, okay, I'm leaving now. And he left, and she and I started rehearsing that scene, and she looked uncomfortable, and I said, are you okay? What's the matter? And she goes, he's here. He's watching. I said, what? David. I said, where? And she said, up there. And over the sets are green beds where the electricians are, and they are just the lights up there, and the lights are set, hung off of the green beds. And sure enough, I looked up and snuck a peek up there, and there was, in the shadows, like Phantom of the Paradise, it was David, because he just wanted to make sure, that his wife was not having an affair, I guess. And I kept thinking an 800, the 500-pound bag of sand is going to drop on me, or I'm going to get hit by a light. But anyway, then finally he left, and they broke up later, and I did go out with Karen a little bit, but I worked with David Soul on Magnum Force, and he couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more gracious, and I don't think he even gave it a thought about any of that. But it was very funny. that she said, he's up there watching. It was like, oh my God.
You know, you talk about some of the great, great character actors that you've worked, not just on Bonanza, but throughout your career. And Aldo Ray and Greg Walcott and Riot and Jack Albertson. I'm sure you had a wonderful reunion with him because was it Lock, Stock, and Barrel you would work together at Universal? So.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And just, I mean, it was just the caliber, you know, Dennis Weaver and the people that came through there. Guys like Bang Russell, I mean, you know, he was the salt of the earth, and he was always trying to get me to chew tobacco, and so he watched me get sick. And, but you know, and it's one of the great things about all that period, I think, for me was the stunt people and the wranglers, the people who took care of the livestock, the salt of the earth, just couldn't have been more gracious and kind and cordial to me, helping me learn how to ride, you know, properly, and just it was an extended family, which we just don't have that anymore. There's very, I mean, they're making a few more Westerns now, but but to be around, you know, people who are good wranglers and you know, stunt people, you entrust your lives to them. So yeah. It was quite a thing.
Yeah, yeah. And Mitch Vogel, you worked with
Mitch
before and after.
Yeah.
9 Hours, and then later on The Quest.
Yes.
What you can tell about our friend Mitch, any recollections you can share?
Oh, he was just, you know what? I mean, I remember him from Yours, Mine, and Ours, and you know, he was always a very professional, good actor. Even as, you know, at that young age. And, you know, then he did the Reavers, and then, I mean, you know, and then Bonanza, and he was growing into almost an adult on that show. I mean, as it were. I mean, he was getting to a point where I'm sure there would have been a lot of stories about his character as he got older. And that was a great thing about Michael too. There were other actors on other shows that was their show, and they didn't share it with anybody. And Michael, you know, this was a family show. It was about these people that, you know, that lived there and their neighbors, and they lived in town, and he made sure that they all shared in the show, and they all had a good part. You know, I mean, this episode that I did with Theodora Duffy, it was my episode, you know, and it was very well written, and it was very well directed. So it was
John Hawkins, the story editor, who knew his stuff, and then later went with Michael to be story editor on Little House.
Right, and you know, it was the last scene we shot with Karen and I and a few of the other actors and stuff. That was the last scene we shot on Bonanza. And I don't know if I told you, but Michael shows up with, I think, an NBC camera crew from local KNBC here in town, and made the announcement on camera to the crew and the cast that this was the last scene ever to be done on Bonanza, that the network called him and they said they were pulling the plug. And this was episode 14, and there were another 8 episodes to shoot, I believe, that season.
Yeah.
And it was like a hurricane hit. And it was like we were thunderstruck. We didn't know what. I mean, nobody knew quite how to react. And it was the end of the day. Everybody's tired, all of a sudden, and go home and don't come back. And Michael put a perfect comedy button on it, and he said, not only is this the end of Bonanza, but it's also the end of Little Joe. And then a prop guy steps in front of the camera, just to the side of it, with a shotgun, points it at Michael, pulls the trigger, and blows Michael back out through the door. And he had a stunt guy on a jerk line pulling him when the gun went off. And it was just typical Michael Landon, in a classy way, with a laugh.
Yes.
Said goodbye to everybody and tried to make everybody feel better.
I'm reminded of something. I think it was Charlie Scott, the assistant director, who called out during the wrap party, which I want to ask you about. Lorne Greene is on the soundstage at Warner Brothers. I guess it's the saloon set, and he's pontificating. And Charlie Scott, I think it was Charlie. No, it was Bill D'Arcy. Bill D'Arcy.
Bill
He
D'Arcy.
says, Bill D'Arcy, aren't you the fellow who plays the father in the Michael Landon show? And just cracked up everybody in the room.
That was the kind of family it was. I mean, you could take shots at anybody, and it was so tight, and and it was a little intimidating for me at first. That's why I think I, with my method acting nonsense, stayed a little bit on the outside. And I said, I'll use that. I'm going to use that because this kid doesn't want to be here, but but they were. It was the salt of the earth. Everybody cared for everybody, and it was a treat. It taught me a lot about what a series really is. It is a family. I'm doing the show Virgin River now, and on Netflix, we're going back for our 7th year, probably early next year. And
congratulations, that's great.
Thank you. And it's just, we're a family, and it's different, but it's the same as the family that Bonanza was with. But they went through so much. Of course, you did so many shows then. We only do 10 a year, but then you do 20. What was the most they ever did? 26?
34.
Well, back in 59, sure, it was 34. Yeah, absolutely.
By the time you were there, they were doing, I think, or just before you came, I think it was 26 or 28. So it was still a pretty impressive number. But, you talk about being a family and keeping things together within the family. And I guess, arguably, you made a faux pas, although you said something that I think was very accurate at the time. It was TV Guide. It was Dick Adler. And you said, what you said? Gunsmoke and Bonanza, outdated Westerns. Their formats are going away. New concepts coming in to take their place. And not everybody appreciated what you said.
Michael Landon was furious with me, and rightly so. I don't even think I'd started on the show yet when TV Guide called, and they might have had David Canary and me, and we went over to the smokehouse for lunch, and I confused talking to the press at this point with confession, I presume. And so I was talking film theory, and I just said, I think the Westerns they've all, because I was at Universal and they had all these different Westerns. There must have been 8 or 9 over there, and they were, Warner Brothers had a bunch, and they were slowly getting fewer and fewer. And I said, I think it's time. I think maybe this cycle has come to an end, and it's time to look at them in a new way. Because I think Altman had done McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which was this crazy, weird kind of Western, but quite good, And so I was sort of pontificating about that, and it was printed, I think maybe in the second week we were shooting, and Michael just took me to the woodshed, and rightly so. He said, how dare you come on a show like this and say things like this? And we've been together. We've lost people we love on this show, and now you're really making it sound like it's not that important, and no one appreciates that, especially me. And it took quite a long time for him to forgive me for that. He was still cordial to me, but he was he took a while to get over that. But it also taught me a good lesson. Get my head out of my rear. It was a stupid rookie actor mistake about something about which I knew nothing, this show. And you have to know how to talk to the press, and what's the purpose of talking to the press. It's not to show off like, oh, I know so much about, style and Westerns and blah, blah, blah. And, and oddly enough, it was interesting in the research for this book.
Yes.
Coming out November 12th. Yeah, I'm glad to meet you. But in doing research for this, when we did The Quest, which was about 76, so it was about 2 or 3 years after Bonanza, it was the only Western on TV. I didn't realize until I was looking it up for research. It was the only and last Western on TV.
Well, that's why I
And-
say what you said was correct, but it's just
Yeah.
unfortunate that you said it for public consumption.
Yeah, yeah. I should, and it taught me a big lesson about how to say things and how is it going to affect the people that I'm closest to and spend every day with. And there's an obligation to those people that do all the work on the show, and work long hours every day. And, you know, that was the big lesson to me. And many overlooked it and forgave me for that. But it was really really a rookie mistake and a stupid thing to do, and something that yeah, it's something you could sit and maybe discuss. I could discuss that with Michael over almond and wine.
Yes.
But not in TV Guide.
Yeah. Shifting gears slightly to something a little more lighthearted, someone has asked, did you have any input into your wardrobe?
I think, yes. I think that
distinctive red bandana and the brown.
Yeah. Because the main distinction is you want to be different from everybody else, but you want to be distinctive. And, I remember getting that hat. We liked that hat. And, but I don't remember all the different choices that went into it, or, if we tried this, we tried that. I mean, hats were the main thing. And we probably had that hat made. Because right over at Paramount Studios at that time, that's Western Costumes was.
Yeah, sure.
And they had a hat department, and you go in and get measured, and and probably somebody like Michael would be there pointing out this. Let's do this, or make this one and that one, and we'll look at it. And usually, you knew what hat you wanted to have them make because you're spending a lot of money to have it made, and then you'd have 2 or 3 of them made, so that the double can have one, I can have one, and then if you lose one, we can always swap them out and stuff. I always found the hat's the most important part of it, but yeah, and I just and I had done 2 Westerns, a Lock, Stock, and Barrel and Hitched with Sally Fields, but it was less of a cowboy, more of a kind of like it was cowboy,
frontier kind of guy.
Yes, exactly right. Thank you.
Farmer.
Yeah, farmer. Suspenders and stuff and like that.
Not particularly charismatic or cool. And are you a collector? Do you have some of your costumes and you have a hat collection in your closet somewhere?
I don't, honestly. I was, because they belong to the wardrobe department, and they collect things when they're all done. And honestly, you find I've gotten costumes from different shows I've done, but eventually they sit there. What happens is that you're not that character anymore.
Yeah.
And you put those clothes on, and it's like, well, this doesn't feel like me. And it's like, oh, it's a nice suit, but I don't, or whatever. So, gosh, I don't really have those mementos.
You have recollections, Tim, of the wrap party? I mean, it was sad news that the show was canceled prematurely, but from the photographs I've seen, the sort of wake that Michael was the MC for looked like was quite nice. Everybody took turns speaking, and Bing Russell, I remember listening to the audio recording, he offered a toast to Pernell Roberts, who had been out of the picture for a while, and Lauren spoke, of course, and Michael and David. Recollections of that evening?
I just remember it being like a family reunion, because usually those kind of parties are, you do them at Christmas time, or you do them at the end of the season, and it's really for the families of the workers, because we're together every day. It's for the people, their wives and children, to come and meet the huge stars that were on this show, and it was a classy operation, and I do remember that being a very special night. I do believe there was music there.
Yeah,
There was
yeah. It was a
live
band.
music and dancing, and um,
But you did not go up to the podium and speak, and neither did David Canary, but pretty much everyone else did. I don't know if there was.
yeah, no, it didn't feel appropriate for me. Um, in light of just having joined the show and in light of having made the faux pas about, TV Guide, I was always trying to make up for that and always extending myself to everyone individually and personally. And so I said hi to everybody and their wife, and they were gracious and very kind and generous to me. So I was it was one of the disappointments was I was looking forward to future years to get closer to them.
Yeah.
And just to, show them that, hey, I'm just not that idiot who did that stupid thing. I am I can, let me try and overcome that.
Yeah.
And eventually when I ran into Michael over at then MGM Studios, now the Sony lot, when he was shooting Little House the next year, and I was doing a movie over there, I did stop by and see him and visit with him and Teddy Voigtlander and the same crew.
Yeah, yeah. Kent McRae brought them all over there, sure.
Oh yeah, it was great.
I have a dear friend who asked me to please tell you that she loves Tucker's Witch. She thought got a really raw deal, and she asked me to ask you what are your recollections. She thought you and Catherine Hicks were terrific together, had great chemistry, and much better than the pair that they picked for the first pilot. And what happened, and she really wanted me to tell you she loved you in that.
Oh, that's so lovely. You know what? It was one of those shows we had a ball, and I loved working with Catherine, and it allowed me, because we're detectives, but it allowed me to pretend to be different characters in the show, and I could be silly and funny, and it was a wonderful show to work on, and I think like a lot of those shows that you just get up against the competition you're up against tells the tale. People say, "Oh, the quest was so good. What happened? Why didn't it stay on?" We were up against a show called Charlie's Angels.
Wow.
End of story. I mean, so what Tucker's was up against, I don't remember, but it was again, that might have been a little bit dated in terms of its concept, because it was sort of Bewitched, with in a detective agency. And I'm not sure to what extent that was the reason it didn't last, or if that was an old idea. I don't know. We had a ball. We loved doing it, and we're very sad when we had to say goodbye.
Did you ever have a chance to, well, you mentioned the meeting with Michael Landon on the Little House set. Did you have any chance to chat with Lorne after the show ended?
No, I don't. I never ran into Lorne again. I did run into David Canary and spent, and socialized with him a bit.
Oh, good.
Yeah, what a wonderful man he was.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
And David Dortor told me he was so proud of when you got the part in Animal House. He said that he called you to tell you how very pleased and proud he was of your success.
That's right. I remember that. And again, that's a classy guy. I mean, it's just the way they did things, and I don't think things are done so much like that anymore. Maybe on certain shows, perhaps. There's now, the difference I find between today and sort of that era was this. It was a business that had been sort of in the family for a long time, and they took care of it, and they did it certain ways. And guys like David Dortort were, they were classy guys. They knew how to treat people and how to do that. I mean, for him to call and say that, that was very nice of him to do that. Yeah. And now it's just sort of not a lot of a lot of the companies that own the studios, they're secondary businesses. Amazon owns some studios, but what does Amazon do? They have the Amazon Prime shows, is that an Apple? That's not they're not in here they didn't get their start making movies. Not that they're not good, but it's just a different kind of feeling. And we're one of the last handmade businesses in the world. We hand make every frame of that story we do, from costumes to scripts to acting to lighting to post-production. And then, there's very few things like that anymore.
I want to talk about your book, but I have one last Bonanza related question, which
sure.
admittedly, it's kind of a stretch, but I think you might be able to handle it. Pernell Roberts and Leif Erikson, two men very large in David Dortort Productions, guest starred in the same episode of The Quest, an episode called The Last of the Mountain Men. John Mitchum was also in that one, and Barry Crane was the director. And it has, unfortunately, the dubious distinction of being filmed, but it never aired on the network, which is a sad thing. I mean, you would see it now, I guess, online, but I wonder if you have recollections of Pernell specifically, or that show generally, that you could share with his Bonanza fans.
Yeah, I mean, he was a wonderful, wonderful actor. And, he and The Quest, we had a lot of act. Amanda Blake.
Amanda Blake
did an episode. So she came from Gunsmoke. I mean, we called a lot of, we tried to honor our Western shows that, and once we could get her, and Pernell was wonderful. I remember just he possessed a certain ease with which he did his work.
He was a vicious mountaineer who left your character for dead. So it was a very, very emotionally charged, atmospheric episode. And he played a pretty good bad guy, so that wasn't too much of a stretch.
Yeah, well, that's sort of why he wanted to leave Bonanza, I think, and he was the first, as long as I can remember, of actor to ever leave a show. I'm sure it's happened before that, but it was like, well, what are you leaving that show for? And he said, I just want to play other parts. I just want to do other things.
You can leave a show, but leave it when it's the #1 show in the country and arguably the world. That's food for thought. Yeah.
It's gutsy. You know what? It's real gutsy. And a lot of times, I mean, I think McLean Stevenson made a bigger mistake, but it's one of those things. And when we look back to the things that you've turned down in your career or couldn't do because you weren't available or whatever, it happens.
Yeah.
You say no to some wonderful things because you want to try and do something different.
Did you ever feel that you were not happy in a project and you wanted to leave?
Not that I can think of in terms of that. No, I mean, there's certain shows you're on and it's like, geez, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but you sort of just gut through it. I mean, because you're only a small cog in the wheel. You're just you've got to do your part and do the best that you can do. I mean, that was one of the reasons I started directing. Was I remember doing a show where I thought, wow, I really performed well. I got the character, I had it down, I think. And then I saw the show and it was kind of flat. It was just not performance-wise, it wasn't well directed. And then I saw another show that I said, it was sort of maybe 75, 80% there with my character, and I did what I wanted to do. And I saw the show and it was like, I looked great. And everybody looked great because it was well directed and the camera was in the right place and it was cut well. And I realized that's what I wanted to direct was, there's the key. You put the camera in the right place, you capture the performance, and then learning from like Clint Eastwood, don't beat it to death. I mean, just do it once or twice. Get him right. And Clint always and Landon was this way too. Just do it right the first time. Let's not work our way into it through take 9. We rehearse it once. And you get it on 1 or 2, you print it, and it's realer, it's more natural. But the more you direct and this finesse and hit this word and do that, then it gets a little bit stale, I think. And I think that from the best of them, Landon Clint Eastwood and Kurt Russell's that way. Let's not beat this to death. let's just keep it real.
And how different approach that is from doing something on stage.
Yes, much different. And having done both, I'm a film guy. I mean, I grew up doing film, and I do like doing theater, but I get burned out after a bit. It's like, okay, I've done this now 40 times, and it's great. You're perfecting your craft, but there's a certain part of you that is in a container, in a box. You're going to do the same thing at the same time every night, and of course you're going to try and make it different and better, but
and you say to yourself, the audience is different, so
can't blame them. It's always, yeah, it was a tough house tonight. What the hell?
So I want to ask you, Tim, what made you decide to write your life story at this stage of your career? You still have a lot more to do.
Well, it's open. For me, what it was when I'd be talking with people, and I'd mention, Bob Hope, Lucille Ball, Jackie Gleason, Dick Van Dyke, Debbie Reynolds, and it's like nothing. A lot of young people, nothing.
Wow.
I mean, they barely know Clint Eastwood. So, I mean, it's like, they're not students of film the way that I grew up being, and I realized that
part of our audience here too, I would say, the people.
No, totally, absolutely. And I just wanted to recount and share the linkage I had to people who were doing vaudeville when they were my young age. Lucille Ball and Bob Hope and Jackie Gleason and Debbie Reynolds, they all came up that way. And I'd see and Lucy and Gleason and Hope, they always would employ people that they had worked with in vaudeville back in the early days of movies, either to be stand-ins or to be background artists. They always took care of them. They always had them around, just to give them work so they get their health insurance, and they'll take care of them, and they hadn't been as lucky as Lucy, but she never forgot them. But I must say that Lucy was instrumental in sort of educating me a bit. She would spend time in her trailer telling me stories about this and that, and basically back in that day, when you were in vaudeville, it was tough. They worked hard and they were tough, and Lucy was tough. And I remember backstage when I was doing the Here's Lucy. I did an episode of her show, and I was dating Lucy Arnaz, and I'm standing backstage with Gail Gordon, and Lucy's there, and Lucy's friend, who's got like 2 lines in the show, who's a former actress back and knew her since vaudeville. And before she went out on stage, made her entrance, Lucy, and so this woman would hear it. She goes, "Gail, $10 as she blows her line." and that woman looked at Lucy and laughed, went out, nailed her thing, came back on stage. And I realized they're like athletes now. I mean, if you're a baseball or football player, you just give nothing but crap to your co-players, and you're beating each other up, and I found that among professional athletes, it thickens your skin, it toughens you up, because they say the worst things to each other. Boy, you can't hit that hanging curve, can you, man? I mean, it's just like, oh my, and they say the real thing so that you can get out in the open, and then you can figure out how to hit that hanging curve. So that's the thing I learned from Lucy and Jackie, and that, it's not as delicate and gentle as I was treating it, and it's come on, let's get in there and do it. Let's just do it.
And you have learned so much along the way, and you are so generous in sharing all these priceless stories that have made you a better actor, a better director, a better producer, and a great writer. And there aren't enough words that I can express to you to show how appreciative I am, because I've had the good fortune to talk to a lot of people in the business, not as many as you have, but you and I both know that there are good apples and not so good apples. And there's a reason why somebody like you has been at the top of your game for more years than you care to admit, but it's because you're just that good. And anybody who knows you and recognizes your work would applaud you endlessly. And
That's very, very nice of you. I really appreciate you saying that. And,
so I would love to talk to you for the rest of the day, but I do think we have something of a schedule. So to walk down, I would ask you, are copies of your book available autographed in the near future? And I know the publication date is November, but tell me whatever you want to tell.
There are autographed. It's called it's called Damn Glad to Meet You, my 7 decades in the Hollywood trenches, and it's really only 6.5 decades. So I round it up, and there are autographed copies out there, and there's a segment in it I call Film School Boot Camp, which is all the little anecdotes and stories about how directing and acting and how to get through here and there. And so it's one of the things that I break out in the book, because I mean, I studied acting, and I've been to film school and a little bit on my own time at UCLA, and they tell you the sort of the perfection and the artistry of it, but they don't tell you how to get out of the jam you're in when you're 3 hours behind on a set, and you've got to make the day, and you only got you got an hour to finish all this stuff, and you got to go, okay, we're doing this in a oneer. It's a one shot. That's it. Everybody, and it's tricks like that. And it's things that I've learned in my innumerable years of doing this, that I just wanted, hopefully, to save, young filmmakers and young actors the trouble of making the stupid mistakes like I did. And also and a lot of the fun stories and relationships that developed during that time.
Were there books that you read along the way that inspired you? Other biographies or autobiographies of people in the business?
I read, oh yeah. I'm a huge nonfiction person. And so I would read everybody's biography, Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud. John Gielgud is my favorite line. And it's one of those things that you don't understand it unless you're, perhaps an actor has been on sets, but somebody kept them waiting all day long. They kept saying, "Oh, Sir John, we'll get to you. They're having trouble, sir, with the set, sir. And Sir John, we're going to be a couple hours later." And finally, they come to him at the end of the day. He hasn't worked at all, and they said, "Sir John, we're so sorry, but we're going to send you home, and we're going to start your scene first thing tomorrow morning. I'm so sorry, Sir John." And he goes, "Oh, dear boy, don't worry about a thing. I act for free. I get paid to wait." and that's film school boot camp. It's just stuff like that. It's that kind of thing. It's like, this will save your ass. A director told me, not a Western director, but a director over at Universal. I said, "Tell me again, what are the 3 top things I should know as a young director?" And he goes, "Sit down every chance you get. Don't run anywhere, and fire somebody the first day."
Who said that? Who told
It was Alexander Singer was his name.
Oh, I remember.
He probably did a Bonanza or two. He was one of those guys, a journeyman over at Universal, and he was great.
Prolific. Yeah,
but he was great, and he was half kidding, about firing somebody, but
Are you planning a book tour, Tim?
Yes. When the book comes out, I think on the 8th of November, I'm going to be up in Santa Barbara at the Riviera Theater, because I lived up there, and Roger Durling, who runs the film festival, is a good buddy of mine. So he's going to do a Q&A with me. We're going to run Animal House, and I'll sign any books and the books are coming out early that weekend through Chaucer's, and nowhere else will they be available. We're just going to be up there at the Riviera Theater on the 8th. Then on the 12th, the book drops. I'm in New York, and I think I'm doing a lot of TV shows and then bookstore appearances. And then in San Diego, I'll be in San Diego, I think on the 18th or the 19th, excuse me. And but I'll be all over. But I'll put it up on my social media page, and if anyone's interested, please, because we're going to do these things, and I love talking about working on special shows like Bonanza and, you know, all the different shows and the wonderful people I've worked with, from Jackie Gleason and Mickey Rooney and, you know, Bert Lahr. I did a pilot with Bert Lahr. And it was just, I mean, it was just fortunate enough to have just met enough of those people to realize how talented and how well trained and smart and lovely they were.
And you were smart enough to gain knowledge from talking to them and remember and apply that to your craft. One of your earliest projects was with Robert Young, correct? And I would imagine he was a good inspiration.
Oh, Robert was great. He was very mellow and measured. And I think that the basic only advice he gave me, he says, take a nap at lunch. When you get older, you don't, you know, I was 12. He said, you know what, you may not think so now, but when you get a little older, you'll just take a nap at lunch. And that saved my life. When I remember Tucker's Witch was, I think, the first series I did that, you know, we ran, I think 15 episodes or so. And that's exhausting. You know, you're the top two people in a show. You're in almost every other scene. You got to work when you get home at night, you get 5 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep. And that saved my life. So I have Robert Young to thank for that.
Do you have a favorite director that you worked with over the years, or top 3 or 4?
Well,
not necessarily household names, but
yeah,
were important to you.
Spielberg,
1941. Yeah,
1941 was I mean, and I just study his films. He composes them, stages them in such a wonderful way, and it helps. It tells the story better, you know. And that's really what you got to find the perfect place to put the camera in it, and that does all your work for you. Mel Brooks, I think, who wasn't directing, but he was, and
okay.
And Frank Darabont. I did a film called Buried Alive with Frank, and
very powerful film, very powerful film.
Thank you. And he was just great. You know, he was just all about character, all about making sure he didn't, you know, get too messy, technical, or worry about his things too much. He would just focus on you and your character and what's the character going through at this point.
And this was before Shawshank Redemption.
Oh yeah, he'd never directed before. And he did a rewrite that he didn't get any credit for, I think, on this one. Yeah, and he was what a lovely man, what a generous, lovely man. So I mean, those are my favorite. But then there, you know, there were numerous directors who do episodic TV, and some of the best I'd worked with were previously editors. But Lee Katzin, who did I think the pilot for The Quest, he was really a wonderful guy. I mean, and those guys, and of course there were hardly any women. So, you know, and it's changed now for the better. But it was one of those things that, oh my gosh, what was his name? There was an Irish director, and nobody could do.
Not Andy McLaughlin.
Not Andy. No. Gosh, he had a brother who was an actor, and
McAvity, Bernard.
Yeah, no. I know the McAvities. They were wonderful. I mean, Bernie and his brother. Yeah. But I'll think of it. But he wrapped. We were shooting The Quest, and nobody could shoot The Quest and couldn't get it done in time. We were always slopping over a day because nobody had done a Western in 2 or 3 years, and all those people were gone, and now everybody's trying to learn it again. And he finished the work at 2 p.m.
Wow.
And the producers rushed up to him, and he said, "Okay, we'll pull up a bunch of stuff from tomorrow." And he goes, "Nope, we're going home. Today's work today, tomorrow's work tomorrow. I'm going to the bar."
Wow.
And oh God, it was, and it was just the people you work with that really knew what they were doing. And they know how to cheat, and they know how to stage a scene and get the best out of the actors. I mean, I remember an episode of Leave It to Beaver, and I looked at it online the other day, and the opening scene is the three kids, just one shot, playing a game along the curb, jumping over things, talking, all this dialogue, and it's so simple and refreshing and lovely. It was almost like cinema verite. And I said, this is Leave It to Beaver. I mean, there were very, very good craftspeople that did those shows. And then every now and then it would sneak through, and the rest of the time, then they just get it done, because Leave It to Beaver only had 3 days to shoot.
Wow.
So, I mean, they moved through it.
You wonder sometimes the great amount of success in episodic television when you consider the very arduous, difficult conditions under which you toil most of the time.
Yes. Who else works 12 hours a day? I mean, and that's 12 plus 1. That's lunch. So that's 13 hours a day. That leaves you, what, 11 hours to drive back and forth, and between your home and the studio, and learn your lines and study for the next day, or prepare as director, or what. It's exhausting, and it's I think they're trying to help now not work people so long, because people have fallen asleep on the road while they're driving home, and they get injured or killed, and it's just it's tragic.
As you look back, and you've done so many varied and successful things, if you had a time machine that was working, or a magic spell that was working, what shows would you go back to relive, to do again, because you had the most fun, or perhaps because you wanted to do it a little differently or a little better? Do you have any answers to something like that?
Yeah, I did a scene in it was in the 2 years in between the Virginian and Bonanza. I did these pilots for Universal, and then I was sort of the freelance actor there. I was being paid as a contract actor, so they loaned me out every chance they got. And I was doing an episode of Owen Marshall, playing a fraternity brother in a college fraternity, not the Deltas, not Animal House. And I accidentally started a fire and had killed a good friend of mine. And I was cradling his body in front of the smoky remains, of a fire that I had been responsible for. And it was supposed to be very emotional. And I just didn't, when we rolled, nothing happened. Because I was sort of an instinctual actor, and it just happened. And in this time, nothing happened. Now I had to start faking it and start blubbering, like, I made it somewhat realistic, and covered my face, and but I faked my way through the scene like I was upset. And I drove home that night, and I was so angry and so embarrassed and so disconsolate, because I said, well, if I can't do it for real, I either shouldn't do it, or I got to learn how to do it. I shouldn't do it or get out, or I'm really going to learn. And that's when with these periods of time that I was at Universal, I was studying those middle 2 years. I was taking every kind of acting, fencing, dance, movement, vocal class I could get. And and then I carried that, then I went into Bonanza, and now I'm in the middle of Stanislavski and all this, and these poor people have to live with that, but they did. But my work did improve, and I did find a technique, and I developed a technique. And it's one of the things I talk about in film school boot camp. You really, Stanislavski only talked to actors and learned what their technique was. And when he discovered that many of the really good actors did it the same way, and that's what he wrote about. And my thing is saying, find your own technique, because you've got it. I found my way into it. And my way is music. I listen to music, and it creates a feeling and a mood for me, or it recalls some past emotional something inside of me, and it puts me in touch with that. So those are the kind of things that I talk about, but I'd go back and fix that. I would have started earlier studying acting, and not feeling like, oh, I can do this. I mean, I go into the Virginian and it was pretty good. It was pretty easy. I was working, I felt good at it. I could play that character. It was fun. And then you get into a different part, and it's like, oops. I need to know how to approach a character like this. That's why I started doing Shakespeare and things like that.
Was it tough to recall memories from many years ago? Did you think of some memory tricks to trigger your memory by looking at photographs or maybe watching the shows you were in, and you thought, gee, I'd forgotten that, but I should write something that sparked a memory?
You got it. It's the photographs, and it's the scripts, and it's looking at the material, and then one thing leads to another. And it's great therapy, part of the joy was sharing the fun and the wonderful things, and how fortunate I have been, but also about the times that I'm embarrassed about, or I'm sorry about, or I wish I could go back and not talk to that guy on TV Guide, because it would have been a whole different experience with Michael Landon. But I was at this point in my life on that show where I thought in my mind, I thought I was much smarter than I really was.
On the other side of the coin, I would say Michael Landon should have remembered what he was like in 1956, 1957, when he was just starting out and he was doing publicity for I Was a Teenage Werewolf. And you got to bet your bottom dollar that he made mistakes doing his press tour. So he should have been a bit more charitable and forgiving in my
opinion. He didn't hit me. I think that's what
we'll give him that. All right.
And he did talk to me after that. So I mean, he opened up. So I mean, and it was an honor and a treat to work with him.
Sure. Well, it was an honor and a treat to talk to you, Tim. And if there's anything that you want to say about your book or anything about Bonanza or horseback riding or directing or Virgin River that I haven't asked you yet, please feel free.
Well, I got to tell you, what comes to mind, Andy, was when I played Reagan in this movie called Killing Reagan.
Oh, very recently, yes.
Nixon and I, and we had a wonderful time. But Reagan was quoted as saying something which has always meant a lot to me, and it was something that I would do in Atlanta when I was there shooting. I'd always go horseback riding on the weekend, because Reagan said, "There's nothing better for the inside of a man or a person than the outside of a horse." And meaning you can't really worry and sweat and get yourself all fretted up about anything as long as you're riding a horse. And it's great therapy. And it put me closer to his frame of mind when I was playing Reagan by going riding like that. But it's something I will just never forget. One of the parts of the book, there was a guy named Whitey Sachs. There's probably not a story I want to tell on your show here, but it's in the book, and it's a little risque. But a guy named Whitey Sachs was my riding instructor when I was at Universal getting ready for the Virginian, and we'd spend 3 hours a day riding, right? Either on the back lot or we'd go out to a ranch and ride for 3 days. And I learned more about Whitey Sachs and his life and his stories. And there was not a person who was smarter, funnier, and had more ways of saying things. And so I've got a whole list of things that Whitey said, and what, he said, "I'm a roper, not a doper," and he but just 100, he said, "Yeah, I'm older than water," and it's just, he just had and all the Wranglers and Cowboys did, and all that, and the stunt people.
Stunt guys, they were great. Yeah, sure.
They're the salt of the earth, and I got to tell you, I learned more and better stuff from them than in a lot of film classes I took.
Was it Earl Bellamy who was the director on The Quest that was so quick at getting things done?
Oh God.
I'm thinking in terms of brothers. There's Earl Bellamy and there's Ralph Bellamy, but that was my best guess.
I'm thinking it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because and it was and he would be that way every day. He did a funny thing too, is he put all the actors in a circle, put their chairs in a circle, and we didn't have phones back then, and so, and nobody left the stage, and we would sit there and no chit chat. You would only talk about character. You'd only talk about story. And if you, or he wouldn't chit chat with about anything. I mean, you might be able to do it, but it just didn't feel comfortable. He wanted people in the zone, get ready, we get on camera, roll it, take it, print it. You know?
And that was unusual, was it not? Because most of the time you didn't have time to rehearse or do a table read or even to sit in your director's chairs. And
totally unique, totally unique.
But a better way to work, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Are you
off in their trailer? I mean, the old pros, Henry Fonda never left the set. Henry Fonda, who was trying to quit smoking when I worked with him, he was doing needlepoint or something that he and Rosie Greer, would do these. I forget what the hell it was, but it kept his hands busy, so he didn't want to smoke. And it's yeah, I think that Earl. No, it wasn't Earl. Earl was so ubiquitous. I mean, Earl. Nobody did as many shows as Earl Bellamy.
Yes, he was very, very prolific. And are you able to incorporate that technique in your sets that you direct?
Oh yeah. I stole from the best, and those are the tricks. Those are the tricks that you learn from. I think that the economy and Clint Eastwood's that way. I mean, when I worked with Clint, I remember going up to him between after our first rehearsal, and I said, Clint, if you want to run lines, anything, I'll be happy to. You want to, however you want to do it. He goes, no, I don't like to run lines. There's something special about the first time you say those words, and I like it to be on film. And I thought, oh yeah, this guy, he either doesn't know how to act, because all good actors, they rehearse.
Sure.
And we did this scene, and Clint he's a great actor. And I realized I was so wrong about him, because we did a scene and he's listening intensely and he's just so in the scene. And I went home that night with just tremendous respect for him. And again, how wrong I had been about him. I just thought, he's a TV actor, he got lucky. No, this guy, he's John Wayne and John Ford wrapped into the same body. I mean, the guy directs and acts better than most theater companies. So
I'll give you a list of names real quick, because I know it's going to stick in my craw and your too. Barry Shear, Michael O'Herlihy.
There you go, Michael O'Herlihy, because his brother is there's Michael O'Herlihy and
Dan.
And Dan O'Herlihy. Dan is his brother, the actor. So Michael O'Herlihy, he was the guy who did it quick, and he was crazy. Michael O'Herlihy, an Irishman, hated the British so much. He tried to enlist in the German army in World War II. That he wanted to fight. He hated it. And
that's hatred.
He and a mate got on there, and he were sailors. They got on a boat and sailed to America from England. And halfway across, this guy dies. The other guy dies and gets sick and dies. And Michael wraps him all up and puts him in the hold. And I was saying, what the hell? Why did you keep the bodies? Well, if I thrown him overboard, I could get accused of murder. I just wanted to have the body as proof that the guy died of whatever the hell it was he died from. But Michael, he was a character. They broke that mold. And he was a wonderful director. I mean, just wonderful. Thank you for figuring that out.
I'll just read out loud. I guess that wraps things up. And thank you. And
thank you so much.
Welcome.
This is what a treat. Thank you very much for your invitation. And I love sharing our thoughts together.
Oh, you're very welcome. Everyone is applauding in cyberspace.
Thank you.
I have one last question for Tim, because people were asking about where to purchase your book, and obviously we want to make sure you get the maximum benefit from whomever purchases it. Is there a particular site that you recommend as far as where you would like them to be ordered from or pre-ordered from?
So I would just say Barnes and Noble or support your local bookstore, because God knows we love them, and without us, they're not going to be there very long.
I'll just read out loud. Thank you very much, Tim. Looking forward to getting your book. Great conversation. This was amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wonderful conversation. Just ordered an autographed copy of the book. Can't wait to read it.
Thank you.
I'm glad to meet you. Can't wait to read it. Yeah.
Good. What fun. What fun.
Thank you again, Tim.
Thanks again. Thank you all. Thanks for spending time here.